is the minimum age that you would accept them in your apprentice program, and what core subjects would we in the educational system of North Kingstown have to provide them with? Because everyone knows that Electric Boat and Toray are two of our largest employees. Are you all up over 600 now? Oh, yeah. We have been up to 600 in Quincy. So with what age?
Sea trials and all those things, tests and stuff. That's quite
I mean, I see kids who, like, they either, like, obviously don't have the money to go to college and can't get bogged down with loans and things like that. And they just feel like they have no place to go. They're lazy, the career and everything. A lot of kids don't know what's going on.
Kim, did you have any questions?
I have a question for you. From what you just explained, that means that most kids who are not college bound, you know, we have to catch them earlier because they either become a dropout or a put out. And put outs are those who high school doesn't have anything for. Now, in order for us to get a handle on those kids and get them motivated toward going and working at Electric Boat, it's going to require a lot of work with our guidance department, because most people think of Electric Boat as labor, and they do have other parts over there, because one of the gentlemen that arose to be the manager, he's down in Groton now, Halamander. He started out in one of the work programs from up that they had at New England Tech, you know, training them. So I would like to see it geared, and maybe that will need some negotiation with Electric Boat, but geared toward the student who's not college bound, but who needs a career, so when he graduates from high school, he can become a taxpayer, not a tax taker. So that's going to require a lot of work with our guidance department. Am I correct? It is. Well, I wasn't aware of it, and I wouldn't have taken up your time for answering that question, but that's one point that I see, and I'm glad to know that you are already involved in that type of work with that student, with that type of student. Uh-huh.
there are a population of students who do not move on, at least not immediately after high school to college. We can find, maybe a year, 2 years out, students find their way, they find the means to get to where they want to be. Sometimes it's the 1A, it's the 95, once we get to our goal. And we're very sensitive to that in the guidance department. We do have a tremendous number of college representatives that come in, and I think that's something that's easily recognizable, that we have representatives at colleges. But we also have representatives from technical and vocational schools who come in and talk to students. We've had ED come in, we've had some of the Dr. Trailer School, some of the vocational occupations come in and meet with students in the same format that, say, a student would go and meet with University of Connecticut. So we do have those small incentives for those students that have college families. You mentioned what you were talking about with the waytogorhode-island.org, tremendous free resource that our guidance department has really embraced through the help of technology. We hope to really embrace that with our electronic ILP, our individual learning program plan, where students are able to sit down and look at what their work value disorders are, what their interest profiles are, and help them meet these career questions and career goals that are appropriate for them, based on their interest, based on their work ethic, based on what their reward system is when you work with those people. So those are things that we're developing with students as a 4-year process, so that by the time they get to senior year, regardless of what circumstances might have given them, they can understand what their goal would be in Coach High School. And that ties into what we do on March 23rd, Coach High School Planning Night. It's the 9-12 event in the sense that we want kids to come back for 4 years and see something different each time they come, depending on where they are. It's hard for a 9th grader to think about, wow, what am I going to do after graduation? That's such a long way for some kids. So sometimes it's even enough for 9th graders to expose them each year.
Mrs. Sweet, I go back even further than Mr. Mudge, and I remember in school when we used to take a paper test that would ask you questions like, would you rather do this or this, and you'd answer all these questions, and at the bottom line, they would tell you, here's what you're going to be, if you go into this type of field, you will be very successful, or more successful than if you tried something else. I'm sure that we still...
That's exactly what waytogorhode-island.org is.
Thank you.
They have those interest surveys.
Yep.
Kids get a series of questions, and at the end they tell them what some of their skill sets are, and from there they are linked to possible occupations. And then that's followed up with, what kind of education is needed to get into that occupation. What might an annual salary be if you pursue this avenue?
Is this available to all high school?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Completely free.
Okay.
And
Super.
Go ahead, Mel.
thank you, Mr. Welch. The student begins with when he is, I would say, the beginning of his sophomore year. What year?
Freshman.
Freshman year. That's better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely better.
Freshman year.
Because usually around the first semester, when they take midterms exam, students have a way of separating themselves. They have a way of doing that. I don't know why. So then we're able to catch them and then keep them involved so that they will complete high school and have the things that they are job ready when they go out of high school.
Absolutely. And I can tell you
That's
just
very good.
as a status update where we are right now, in 2 weeks from now, I can tell you that all students will have been exposed to waytogorhode-island.org. They will have had an account set up. They will have started their ILP, and they will have invited their parents to be able to view that document, as long as the parents have an email address that's accessible. The other thing the guidance department has done to sort of bridge this gap is that we started in September working with Jane Hall Stinson at Crossroads, and once a month, representatives from the high school, including guidance, social workers, we have made monthly visits out to Crossroads to get to the families that might not be able to get here or may not understand. We're doing a lot of technology with a lot of these kids, and we understand that not all families have that resource. So we have availed ourselves going out to Crossroads once a month. It's been very successful. We get some nice positive feedback from Jane Hall Stinson about the impact that those visits are having on that community. In fact, we've even organized with Crossroads to have a van available the night of post-high school planning night to assist families to get to us in the event that they're not able to transport themselves.
That is beautiful, and that's
Thank you.
what I call educating all students.
That's right.
And I'm glad to hear that your Crossroad is cooperating with you.
It's been a phenomenal experience so far.
Okay, could you say that again?
It's been phenomenal.
Thank you.
I want to thank you folks for coming tonight. Courtney, I know that you have the training position over there at EB. Martha, you're the links director for us. And of course, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Donna, from Guidance. I would just like to tell the community that EB has been enthusiastic about this working arrangement. Under a normal economic situation, not what we have now, they have an annual turnover for retirement of about 100 people per year. People just aren't retiring like they used to because of the economy. But this is such a wonderful opportunity for our students to gain a life occupation that is transferable anywhere in the world. A company such as EB that has such high-quality standards, if you can make it at EB, you can go anywhere and get a job. So giving our students the opportunity to work with a company of the quality of EB is such a leg up from any other school system in the state. We need to make this program work for all of our students that either don't have the means to go to college or their dexterities are not towards college but to working with their hands, et cetera. And I thank you all for your coming out here tonight and the effort that you've put in. And anything that this committee can do to help you expedite this, by all means, come forward. Thank you.
I would like to see them extended to Torrey.
Okay. The next thing is citizens' comments. This lasts for a maximum of 15 minutes, and anyone who comes forward will be allowed 3 minutes. Do we have a list?
Plenty of leeway.
Okay, one person, Bill Eibel.
Hi, I'm Bill Eibel. I'm an English teacher here at the high school, and I'm actually quite nervous at the moment because there's a lot at stake for me right now, and I got 3 minutes to make my pitch. From what I understand, what I'm asking for is I'm asking you for you folks to put me on an agenda so I can make a complete pitch. What has basically happened to me is that I was offered a salary when the job was offered to me, and that when I arrived for work, that salary was cut unilaterally by 2 steps, quite a bit, from step 3 to step 1. And basically what I'm here to do is appeal to your sense of fairness and integrity and ethics and all that. I have no idea what the legalities of this are. But basically the way it went down, and I'll keep it as brief as I can, is that I was offered a job verbally after interviewing for it, and was offered a salary, and I accepted that salary verbally. There was never any mention that that might not be a solid offer, that it had to go before anybody else or anything. And based on that verbal offer, I went back to my family and accepted it, and then took myself out of the running for all the other jobs that I was in a running for based on that. A couple weeks after that, I arrived here for the orientation program for new employees, and I was given a written contract with my step, my salary, written on it for me to sign, and I signed it. So now I had a written contract as in addition to a verbal contract, for lack of a better word. This was probably 2 to 3 weeks before school started. Last I heard about it, I arrived for school on the first day, and about 15 minutes before I started employment here, I was called into the principal's office and informed that that contract that I had been offered and signed and that I turned down all my other job prospects based on was not going to be honored, and that I was going to be offered, instead of step 3, I was going to be offered step 1. Okay? So you can imagine what my response was. I was totally dumbfounded. It was just like, what? I mean, there are no jobs left. I've turned down all the job offers that are out there. There are none left. They've all been filled. It's the first day of school. There's nothing for me to do except say no and be unemployed, or say, yeah, I guess so. So what I said was, you can do that? I mean, I was kind of shocked that anybody could, or that anybody would do that. And I understand what the impetus behind it is. I mean, these are tough economic times. Everybody's trying to balance a budget, and apparently that was one way to balance a budget. I don't think it's a fair or equitable, ethical, or any other way to do that. And I don't think there was any intent there. I think it was all done perfectly. I think the people who were making the offers weren't trying to defraud me or fool me or take advantage of the economic situation, but the reality is that a person is what they do, and an institution is what they do. And this is an institution. What this institution has done is offer one salary, give a written contract based on that salary, and on the first day of work, renege on that and say, you've got to take this other salary that's considerably lower, and that this is going to follow you through the rest of your career. So this is a pretty important thing for me, since it determines the course of my career, it determines my family's livelihood. This is not a second income. This is a first income. I've taken a major pay cut to switch careers to come here, and I'm perfectly happy to do that. I made that decision. I don't have any regrets about that. And I want to emphasize that except for the salary issue, I have no problems here. I'm very happy with the people I work with. I'm impressed by their professionalism and by their capabilities. My department head is wonderful. I'm happy with the principal. I've had several meetings with the superintendent, and I'm impressed with him. And, this is a great place to be and a great place to work, but I was offered step 3, and that's what I accepted. And it seems only fair and ethical to honor that. So that's basically my pitch, the short version of my pitch. And what I would like to do is talk to you further about it, because I guess there should be no discussion or.
So your request tonight is to be put on the agenda for another public meeting?
But for however I go about asking you folks to reconsider, yes.
Okay. Now I'd like to ask the superintendent to please speak.
In terms of the history of this, Mr. Welch? Or?
As to what the situation was and is.
Sure.
Excuse me? Mr.
Yes, Mr.
Welch.
Mudge.
I honestly think this is a personnel type of matter that should be taken offline.
It can't
And
be.
I feel that there is a policy. I think that Ms. Page would show that if you've gone through the steps with, up through the superintendent, you then can come to the school committee. And you don't need to come before us here tonight and say a public meeting or anything else. And I think that's the process, isn't it, Dr. Thornton?
Well, in terms of this matter is at the school committee level. It's past my level.
I beg your pardon, then, it's already come to the school committee.
Mr. Ibel is talking about a school committee action. That's his conversation tonight.
I beg your pardon, I was unaware of that.
Okay. So if we could have the superintendent please give us a little background.
Thank you.
Just very briefly, being public comment, new hires this past year are brought before me. We have a final brief interview. At that point, I do look at their experience, talk to HR, and look at what step they would be placed at, given the experience from out of state in Massachusetts. I believed him to be a step 3. I recommended at that night's meeting in Hamilton School 4 individuals for various steps, a 4, a 3. At that meeting, your attorney did advise you under Rhode Island law, you had the option to honor or not honor out-of-state service. At that evening, the committee, I believe, chose to honor only in-state service, and you moved down 4 individuals from a higher step to a lower step. And that's how that played out late in the fall.
Mrs. Avizano?
I hate to get into this publicly, as Mr. Mudge said, a little difficult, but I need to respond. And
Yeah.
this committee had told the superintendent where we were in terms of hiring and where we would like to be and where we were financially. And we wanted to hire at lower steps if we could. And we had a lot of applicants, and there was not a lot of, it was just one of those things where we did not communicate well, apparently, between the superintendent and the school committee. And I don't know if you were a teacher. I know you said you switched occupations, but...
No, I was a journalist, yeah.
Yeah, just the way it's set up when you're a teacher is in terms of having the administration talking with you and doing the hiring, and then the school committee approving, and it's not final until the school committee approves it. It's always that way.
Well, I understand that, but that was not made clear to me during the hiring process. And in fact, the contract that I was asked to sign says nothing about school committee approval. It's presented as a done deal contract. And so when I signed it, and when everybody signed it, I mean, it's not just me, I mean, everybody who signs it, it all goes down the same way. During the orientation, there's nothing verbally said that it's pending school committee approval, and there's
Good idea
nothing,
to have
there's nothing in writing.
Nothing in the contract.
And the,
Nothing in the contract.
oh, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just,
Excuse me,
I'm
can
just.
we wait to be
I'm-
recognized?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Ibel, at this point in time, I'm trying to give the background to
Yeah.
the school committee. I'm not trying to shut you up.
Okay.
Just so that we have some new members, so that they understand what happened and the procedure, the process that we went under, so that then they can either honor your request or not. So if you would allow the members, excuse me, Mrs. Benson, you had your hand up.
Page.
Mrs. Page?
Well, I would say that Mr. Ibel has been asked to be placed on our agenda, and I would support that and ask for him to be placed on a future agenda.
I second the motion.
Okay, is there any more
You basi-
discussion?
You can't make you can basically agree to let him go on, but it's not going to be a vote.
Consensus?
Because this is under
Right.
public comment. So
Yeah, and we shouldn't even be speaking about it.
you're right.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Benson?
Would you explain
We'll
that,
get you on.
Attorney Carroll?
First of all, this is not on the agenda. Second of all, this gentleman has come to make a statement. Based on what he says, if the committee has the consensus of putting him on the agenda, we can put him on a future agenda and discuss it then. But as Mr. Mudge just said, and I think a couple of others, we can't be discussing it this evening because it's not on an agenda.
Okay.
So, I mean, if he's put on the agenda, then the legality of what happened, the superintendent's comments, we can discuss it at that point. Furthermore, this is an open session matter because it's not a job performance. And under the exception to the open meetings law, you can only go closed if it were a job performance. He's coming in here, and he's basically asking you to change his salary. That is not job performance. So it needs to be an open session where it's discussed.
And which is
Up for that.
another question for you. That is heavily laid upon the seniority of the person. And who made the decision that he would, this is a personnel matter, and it really shouldn't be discussed in the open.
It's not
Isn't this a personnel matter?
No.
And he's considered a personnel of the
Yes.
school department?
Yes, but you're not discussing job performance. The exception under the open meetings law is that a person can come into executive session if we are going to discuss his job performance. So he wouldn't be under the exception, the first exception, which is job performance. This is an open session issue because we're talking about salary.
And it's public comment.
Okay, well,
I don't think this is just my feeling, which isn't worth anything, but I think that what I've heard from the gentleman, that this should be an executive meeting thing, because I have other questions to ask. Why was he given one thing verbally, and was he notified?
And
It is permissible to ask the question
In open
of a
session-
person
in open
who
session-
is testifying or talking in the open session.
in open
So my
session, when it's
question-
discussed,
Yes.
when it's on an agenda, it's not on an agenda this evening, you can ask
He
whatever
violated
questions
the
you
law,
want.
huh?
No, he can get up under, we're not violating it yet, but we're getting close to it if we start making motions and things like that regarding it. Under his comments, he has a right to say whatever he wants to say, but we can't discuss it any further because it's not an agenda item.
so if I understand, Attorney
I don't understand.
Carroll, I can ask if there is a consensus at this point?
Put this on the agenda.
And the
Mr.
consensus would be
Welch,
how
would you
many
please give
folks?
me-
Just a second, please.
Majority.
Majority. I'm sorry, go ahead now.
Please give me the opportunity to ask our attorney another question.
Go ahead.
In the open meeting law, there is permission that if someone speaks up and you as a school committee would like to ask them a question, you can. Am I correct?
Not exactly.
Well, now, what exactly is wrong with it?
He's under public comment right now. He's coming
That's correct, and
he's
this
coming
is
to
what
the
that
committee.
refers to in open meeting law.
But public comment means he discusses something with the
That
committee.
I understand.
It doesn't allow for extensive give and take when the item is not on the agenda. This item is not on the agenda. So he has a right to come and speak. You have a right, from what you've heard, to say, I think we need to put this at a future agenda item, and at that point, you can ask all your questions, Mrs. Benson.
But it's my right to ask a person who is speaking in the public agenda a question, not expecting
But he
an
shouldn't be
answer.
speaking.
Said all he can say.
Okay. I'd like to ask by a show of hands.
Could I make
Show-
a comment, please?
By a show of hands, if we have a majority for a consensus to put this on the agenda for the next meeting.
May I comment first, please? Thank
Okay.
you.
If we have a
May I
consensus.
comment?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would have no problem with meeting in public, but I would offer, I think, frankly, we should meet in executive session only because I'm not sure, and I don't know the reasons why this might have changed. And in fact, do I know or don't I know that perhaps it could have had something to do with prior job performance or something? I don't know that, and I don't think that that should be discussed in public.
Bill,
Huh?
Bill, it doesn't. There's nothing about prior performance involved here.
Boy, I'd say
new-
that-
It's a, the attorney has told us it has nothing to do with job performance.
Fine, let's have it public then. Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
All
Glad
right,
to have it public.
sir, we'll put you on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to correspondence. Mrs. Page.
All right. I received correspondence this week. I always ask the principals as to if they have any students or staff who they'd like to recognize. And I got a very nice note the other day, on Monday, from Edie Dunn over at Fishing Cove. And she wanted to tell me about one of her students who is here today and has been very patient for the last hour. So I applaud you and your sister for sitting there for so long. So anyway, I want to read this about him, and then and at the end, when I read about Alex, if you could come up here, because I'm sure everyone will be as impressed as I was once they hear this, and I'd like you to come up here then, and so that we can all shake your hand. Alex is here tonight with his mom, Gina, and his dad, David, and his sister. His name is Alex DeCenso, and it says here, Alex DeCenso is a happy fourth grader in Mrs. Nelson's class in his 5th year at Fishing Cove. He loves the outdoors, especially the cold, has aspirations of attending college in Alaska. His current occupations are first and foremost Legos, and more particularly Lego Star Wars. When he is not battling the evil forces of the Empire, he loves to play the drums, basketball, lacrosse, and sailing. He collects coins and is a car enthusiast and a World War II buff. When he was in 3rd grade, he won a statewide essay contest sponsored by the Audubon Society, in which he developed a plan to make the town of North Kingstown more bike-friendly. More recently, he won 2nd prize in the annual Richard Dunn Memorial Photo Contest for a photo of his favorite owl, Big Mama. He is currently competing in the district-wide spelling bee representing Fishing Cove. He loves to read and spend time with his sister exploring the backyard and sledding. Achievements aside, he is a funny, caring, rambunctious, curious 10-year-old who brings much joy to everyone around him. This is great, Alex. Thank you for coming tonight. Come up here so we can all shake your hand.
Very nice.
How are you, young man? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Alex. And I read about you.
Great.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Alex.
Emphasis should be on the children.
Watch the wires.
I had one question to ask. Did they send him a letter notifying him that
Okay, was there any other correspondence?
Yes, I have some correspondence, please. I got four documents here. I would like to provide to the chair correspondence between myself and Attorney Carroll. I'd like to have on the record regarding a legal opinion concerning sealed records. I'd like to have it on the record, and I'd like to have it on the agenda to discuss, please. The second document is as a result of our discussions about Jamestown's tuition rate, whereas I forwarded a letter to the Department of Education regarding Jamestown's tuition rate and the money that we receive from Jamestown for state aid. There may be a problem there. I have documented it, and I am meeting this Friday with Carol Diaz, who I sent this response to, but I'm giving this to the chair, and ultimately would like to have that discussion at some point in time. Third document I'd like to, with the chair, is called the rates between North Kingstown and South Kingstown on direct educational cost per pupil, which shows that Jamestown gets $811 per student from the state, and North Kingstown gets $2,400. It's very critical to dialogue on tuition rates. And the fourth document I'd like to provide is a document, a subject matter I'd like to see on the agenda, and it concerns penalties for violating the town charter by officials and so forth and so on. I think it's important, and we ought to have it on the agenda for discussion. Thank you.
Are there any other items of communication? Mrs. Page?
Yeah, I have one more thing. From Wickford Middle School, I received that congratulations to the Wickford Middle School students who are participating in the district spelling bee. They have Shantrea Sanford, who is their winner, 7th grader, Carlos Aldrete, who is 8th grade, Nick Buggy, 7th grade, and Sarah Anoshian in 6th grade. So congratulations to those students.
Mrs. Avocado?
I just want to note the letters that we had in our packet regarding a bus accident and the actions of one of our drivers and one of our bus monitors on bus 16. The driver, Jennifer Hancock, and the bus monitor, Diane Flynn, were commended for helping the children and maintaining professional, calm, and compassionate demeanor after the accident and really helping out all the kids. So John Horan, our supervisor of transportation, recognized them in a letter, and I just wanted to mention it.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
I have a piece of correspondence from myself.
Yes,
and
Mrs.
you
Bennett.
may determine whether it should be on the agenda, but I'm sending it in as an agenda item.
It's on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. If the clerk would please disclose the executive session votes.
All members were present for the January 25th, 2011 executive session except Larry Cerisi. Motion unanimously passed by all members present to go into executive session. Motion passed unanimously to approve the sealed executive session minutes of January 4th, 2011. Motion unanimously passed to approve the sealed executive session minutes of January 11th, 2011. Motion unanimously passed to seal the executive session minutes of January 25th, 2011. And motion unanimously passed to adjourn the executive session and go into open.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Mudge was absent.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi and Bill Mudge.
How could you forget me?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that it, Maureen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you read the...
Okay, now we're going to do the consent agenda, which is considered to be normal business for the school committee. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any member of the school committee wishes to have accepted?
You mean exempted?
Yeah. Okay. No one wants to have anything taken out?
I got a monthly financial update.
Go ahead.
I guess not, okay.
If not, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Just a second, I was waiting for others, Mrs. Page. There, item E1 and 2, I want to take out, so now if you...
1 and 2.
I'm sorry, E. E1 and 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mrs. Page, is for you, would then make your motion.
You have something you want to, I won't make my motion unless you have something to
The
exempt.
consent agenda, yeah, is F, please, 3F.
I have a different agenda than,
I have a different,
Oh,
I don't have an agenda.
Of course you do. I got one, it's a month old here. Hold on.
Agenda because I didn't receive a packet.
mine says January 25th, what does it say?
Yep, printed mine off my computer this morning.
I don't know what you've done. All right, well, Bill, what was yours? Which one?
I'm going to pass, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
why don't you state what the
apologize.
items are so on the
All
record,
right.
so we know what they are.
Well, the ones that
Fire alarm.
I'm asking to pull off are the approval for bids on facilities, et cetera, for the fire alarm upgrade and the cubbies at Stony Lane and Good Nesset.
I make a motion that we approve all other items under the consent agenda except for those that were exempted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Okay. Item E1 on my agenda, which is the fire alarm upgrade for the school administration, I would like that tabled, as I have asked to have the school department apply for a variance with the state fire board to see if we can not have to spend $15,000 to upgrade the alarm system at the school administration, since we are planning, hopefully, in the near future, to occupy the Wickford Elementary School, in which time the change of use and occupancy may not require the same upgrade as they're looking for at this time. It's not within the fire inspector's purview to grant exceptions. It's up to the board to grant the variance. So by doing so, if we apply for this and they grant us the variance because of the future change in use, then we may not have to spend as much or maybe at all. Mr. Mudge?
I concur with you, Mr. Chairman, and I think the fact that upgrade was originally documented in 2007, so I don't see the urgency, given the length of time that it's been around. So I fully support that.
Mrs. Benson?
I was just going to say that I agree with you, and we can work forward to the future date if we'll be able to put that in there when we will occupy the Wickford School, which will take more. And for my own benefit, I would like to see some future dates of what we have planned. Is it a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or what, to occupy the school?
That, of course, is up to the town. I have been asking through Consolidation Committee for the architect's information so that our school facilities committee can look at what the architect is suggesting. And what we were supposed to have, I believe, in November, we may get by the end of February. So as soon as, it's got to go for bond approval. It's in the hands of the town council, quite frankly.
Okay. One of my rationale is I don't want to see us spend money for something we don't have to, like you explained, which was a great idea. But I don't want to see our employees in the administration building being at risk. So we would need some more data from you, and I think that you are on the Consolidation Committee and the head of the Facilities Committee as a person from the school committee. So we need that information, because if it's serious at the administration building, in which from a layman's point of view, I don't think so. It looks just like anything else. But we made all those outrageous fire rules due to the nightclub, and I think some of us, we voted them too freely. And I'll have to say we, because I was sitting there. So,
So can I have a motion, please, to table?
Sure. I'll make a motion to table the fire.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
I'd like to hear from Dr. Thornton.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just in terms of why that was there, we reacted to a recent letter from the fire marshal, post-207 to this year, where we still had to do the work, thus we brought it to you. In our mind, in looking at the laws, we knew it, if you didn't ask for a variance in 30 days, that was it. But we're happy to ask for the variance.
Yeah, may I
Yes,
comment
go
on
ahead.
that? I, in fact, talked to the fire marshal, Ms. Welch, and especially with regard to the comment you made, which is well taken, in terms of trying to get the cost of these deficiencies in the, from the architect. And I'll be glad to give you the documents that I received for all the schools. And I can say to you, the things that are on record today of life safety code violations documented by the fire department probably doesn't amount to more than 30 or 40,000 at the very most for all the schools in the district. So I really question, the architect's assessment of the amount of money that we have to spend for code violations in those plans. And I'll be glad to present the reports that I received last week.
Okay, thank you. So we need a vote on the tabling of the fire alarm upgrade until we hear back from the variance. There's been a motion and a second, right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. On the second item, the cubbies for Stoding Lane and Hensler, I'd have the superintendent speak to that.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to table those. I'm not ready to move forward at this time.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Passed unanimously. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. A discussion of possible action. Anything on the 2010-11 school budget funding formula update?
In terms of the funding formula, nothing substantially has changed in terms of the formula they have out, that North Kingstown would be relatively unharmed if they enact the formula. The operative word is if they enact it. As you know, the state is not in good financial shape. It would cost many millions to enact the formula. So if they do enact it, we should hopefully hear about that soon, and we would be relatively held harmless. If they don't enact it, then we have to still try to anticipate what they might fund us at. But right now, that's where we are. In a related matter, we do have another meeting with the state on funding and chart of accounts, I believe February 11th.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mudge?
I believe, I was at a conference at Bryan College over the weekend, and this issue came up, which Gary Sass spoke to. And I believe this week the governor's preliminary budget will be out. I think it was said it was going to be out this week. So we ought to have a pretty firm idea, what's in it from a budget standpoint. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is the 2011-12 school budget, transportation budget, late bus. Superintendent?
At this point, as you know, last week I took you through my proposed additions. Today, we also met with the Budget Subcommittee to discuss some of the questions they had on the DEP and how that applies to the budget. And also, some folks had asked for maybe more clarity on one of my ads, that being a possibility of a transportation ad for late buses. So essentially, I'm open to any questions you have on the proposed budget, the proposed ads, or the late bus conversation.
Any questions? Mr. Bunch?
Is this just restricted to the transportation budget or the entire budget?
The entire budget under B, and certainly transportation, as it was a focus point of a few of the members of the committee, had asked me about details on that. Either one's fine.
We're on item 4, 2, 211, 212 school budget?
Yes.
Item A. Yeah, with respect to that, and in fact, it's applicable to the entire budget process. As we know, as you earlier said, we do have not only a funding formula, but we have a chart of accounts. And I would like to see what our budget, our fiscal budget, looks like and is with respect to the basic educational plan. For example, when we met with Commissioner Gist last week, she acknowledged in the basic educational plan that it did not include transportation cost, nor did it include co-curricular or curricular costs and so forth and so on. Now, in our current budget, as well as, I can't speak for the 012 budget, we really don't have any separation in our budget that reflects these things. For example, we know that we don't know what part of our budget is specific to the basic educational plans and which parts aren't. For example, with respect to item 2A, the transportation budget, I would ask, is that a basic educational requirement mandated by, the state? That's just one example. Okay.
I can speak to that. We actually spent some time on that. Mrs. Benson asked the question. Here's what we learned. In terms of transportation, 1621.1 talks about transportation, and in kind of a long-about way, they say we can modify the walking distance of a school district. We must get transportation. The word they use is in terms of how impractical it may be as far as how far they walk. We currently have a radial mile, if you will, for some grade levels, et cetera. We could make that a five-mile radial, which would be, difficult, but we do need to do transportation based on 1621.1. However, you're right, we didn't see it referenced. Here's the new BEP, by the way. It's about this thick, and I did have it for tonight's conversation. The old BEP was yay thick, but you really don't see the BEP in here per se, but it is in RIGL 1621.1. In terms of your other question, we found some other areas that Ned and I pulled out as far as that wasn't in the BEP. Some that come to mind are health insurance. We don't have to give health insurance to employees, but we do under contract. Sick days, vacation days, not in the BEP, but we do that under contract. Mr. Draper, what are the other ones we talked about?
Wait, I'm sorry.
We have like 5 or 6 we can give you right now. I gave you 2.
There's extracurricular activities, life insurance, and cafeteria services beyond the basic services.
But here's the big piece for the committee. The old BEP kind of tied your hands. You had, for example, one piece, a high school of 2,000 kids must have two librarians. The formula it was like an input formula. The new BEP says the school committee has the latitude to decide what's sufficient. It's kind of like loose, tight leadership, as I call it. The state says you must give, an art program K-12. Kids must have a sufficient art experience. But you can decide what sufficient is. You may say the middle school, like Cranston, made some cuts in the arts, but they still get a sufficient amount of art K-12. I would contest that, but that's my job. But you would maybe want to think about what is sufficient or adequate for all these things in the BEP. So that's different. You have latitude now in the BEP.
I think that's my question. I don't think we are capable of doing that, frankly. What I think we need to do is get a school budget that says, forgetting state revenues, which we have no control over, and federal revenues. I understand the state revenues have changed somewhat, but with respect to even the combination of state and local revenues, forgetting federal revenues, of the amount of money that we're expending, how much of that money is required, demanded for expenditure for the BEP, and what lies outside of that boundary? I think you need to come back to us and say, look, this budget here meets the BEP requirements, that the town funds, and this with the state funds and the federal funds, saying that backwards, okay, reverse engineering that statement. What I'm saying is federal funds, if we lose all federal funds, we have no obligation to provide any services, right? In other words, our federal documents are programmed for specific applications that we must provide, right?
Talking Title I, for example?
No, I'm talking about, basically all federal funds, with exception one. So if we have Title I, Title II, whatever in it is, if that money dries up, we have no obligation, okay, to implement those programs.
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure where you're going.
Well, what I'm just saying is, if the federal government cuts our budget to zero this year, do we have an obligation to implement those federally mandated programs that are attended with that?
Sure. Federal law still stands.
I would say also, aside from the legal obligation, I think a moral obligation in terms of special
Yeah,
education.
I understand,
Title I.
but when it becomes a moral obligation, it becomes a choice, as opposed to a mandate. See, that's what I'm saying, okay? Now, if you drop that out and say, okay, we don't receive those funds, we don't have an obligation, or we may have a moral, if we don't get that money, then that means we have to dip into our town money if we have a moral obligation, which we may or may not have. So now we get down to the fact, and I think it's very important to understand this because it happened the last couple of years. If the state, for example, gives us $10 million in state aid, how much of that is applied to the basic educational plan? Because what happened before and may happen in the future, which we can't predict. Suppose the state comes by and says, we're cutting $2 million from the budget, okay, state budget. Well, if they cut $2 million from our state budget, what does that mean in terms of implementing the basic educational plan? Do we have a requirement? Well, what is our requirement then? What programs must we delete or eliminate as a result of that?
Right.
So finally, you get down to our taxpayers' money, and as Mrs. Gist said,
I can speak to part of that. 2 years ago, when we were cutting the budget, when I first came online, I saw some things that were very nice, but clearly outside of the BEP. We had the SMART program. That was a great thing to have, but not in the BEP. That was reduced right away. Last year, we had a tough conversation around sports student activities. $650,000 this year, if memory serves. Not in the BEP, but we'd love to have those things. That's why you always hear about school districts talking about those things first, because those are clearly...
I understand. I guess what I'm saying, Dr. Thorne, is I would like to see our document, like basic minimum requirements. It's, 50 million, 42 million, 40, whatever it is.
Here's what I can tell you quite simply. I can take Mr. Draper's email. For example, we have 6 items we pulled out for you. One of them is health care, around $6.5 million for health care. That's not realistic in my mind to cut health care. It's contractual. We can break contracts and not fund health care. But we can add up those 6 items and get you maybe $10 million. But
Well, yeah, I think that's the things we need to know what our fiscal correlated responsibility is with the basic educational plan.
finish. It's not that simple. Let me give you an example.
Well, I didn't suggest it be simple. All I'm saying is we need that
I
data.
just want to give you an example of how it's not as clean as giving data. Page 18 talks about every district will build a comprehensive assessment system. That's a pretty loaded, big term. That's, when I first came here, we didn't really have this. We did state tests, and we had local assessments in classrooms. We didn't really talk building to building. We now have something you've heard of before called Ames Web. You've heard of NWEA. These are like pulse checks on kids, assessments we do. We have Dr. Roger's office. We have curriculum conversations. All that's part of this page 13 mandate from RIDE. They're not going to tell us to what extent we do it, but they would say you must have a comprehensive assessment system. And I would think that chickens come home to roost when, if we don't perform well on the state test, they would ask, how's your comprehensive assessment system 13-3, and start looking at us. But really, to give you a data piece on what's included in page 13, that'd be Dr. Roger's office, that would be curriculum coordinators, assessment systems. I'm not sure I can tie it out to the exact dollar in like a matrix or an Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty entangled.
Well, I think we have to do that, and quite frankly, I don't think any school district in the state of Rhode Island has done that today, to date. I haven't seen a budget that says, here's the budget that meets your obligations in terms of a basic educational plan. And all I'm saying is, I think we need to do that. I know it's going to be tough. And then you have to come back with the choices to the committee to say, whatever you think is appropriate, this is, I need $40 million to meet the basic
Well, at this
educational
point,
plan.
I'm telling you, at this point is, I'm recommending to you, what we have currently is what we need, and I'm proposing some potential adds to you. What I'm saying is, I wouldn't propose we do any reductions and say, I'm looking to add 2 social workers, page,
Yeah, but, I'm sorry, Dr. Conant, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I want to see it in writing. I want to see the document that
Mr. Mudge.
shows this.
Mr. Mudge, it's all well and good, I think, that you want to see something in writing, but it'll take an action by this committee.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
So I
And-
think if you want to discuss this further, we should put it on an agenda item.
Please?
I think we should put it on an agenda item for the
Thank you.
next meeting.
Okay.
So that we can move along and get this agenda completed in a timely fashion, please. Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. I won't comment on the questions that Mr. Mudge asked, and Dr. Thornton, you're correct. And I remember when I nominated you to be superintendent, I said you was a person that if you ask the same question twice, you get the same answer. So you fulfill my prediction of you because you gave him the complete answer that you gave us. But I want to ask you a question. When it comes to number A, it says transportation, budget late bus. But we also discussed the special ed buses. So does that mean that the minibuses, I'll go with the new language that the governor came out, the minibuses for the challenge students. Will that be discussed under another heading?
Yes.
yes, under
H.
I was asking
H.
Dr. Thornton, Mr. Chairman, he's superintendent.
Under H, I think you see that there.
Yes, okay.
Okay, moving on. Dr. Thornton, do you, I'm sorry, Kim, did you?
Yeah, I still have more questions under budget.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Dr. Thornton, you sent us all the BEP, and you stated that there were a few places where we could, you had 6 places where we would be able to cut back in our costs, since they weren't on the BEP.
I don't think they're practical, but those are things, 6 things that technically aren't in the BEP.
Well, that was my question, if there is anything here that you would recommend.
No. For example, under contract right now, we give teachers sick days. We have in paraprofessionals, et cetera, we have an historical number for the district for subs to come in when people are sick. If we have a contract, we have people's time to be sick, we have to pay for the subs to be in for them when they are sick. To cut this would not be practical in my mind. They exist, but they exist under contract, most of these. The one that does not, I believe, would be the cafeteria, number 6, I think,
No, number 6 is insurance.
maybe 5. Number 1 is cafeteria.
Yes, the cafeteria is on there. Mhm.
You know, that's an enterprise fund, and that's a conversation you could have on how you do cafeteria services.
All right, the other question I have was in our enrollment, because you sent us all an email on our enrollment. And this will be the second year in a row, or will it be the third year in a row that we're declining?
I believe the third, we've been tracking down, and NESDEC has us tracking down for the foreseeable future. As you know, the question always is, when it tracks on enough to realize a savings in a section. And as I spoke to you, I think last week, it's not always a one-to-one correlation. For example, the middle schools, I think, are losing, I want to say, 30-something students over 2 elementaries, 13 teams. It's not as if you're going to have, you might have 25 in a room, now you have 23 in a room, same electricity, same lights, et cetera. 2 years ago, when we did the budget, you may recall, we reduced several elementary teachers, because back at that point, we had some pretty small class sections. I told some of the folks on the committee, be happy to sit with you. We roll forward our numbers, and I can show you the sections as we're projecting them right now. But as you know, it's never an exact science. For example, in the first grade, we tend to get more kids that come in. They go private full-day K, and then a lot of folks come back to go grade 1 public, and that can inflate our number. So right now, for example, I'll give you one. I believe in one of the schools right now, we have on the books potentially 12.65 students per section at one of the elementaries, say 3 teachers. If I go 2 teachers, now up on the cap of 19. If I cut it very close to the vest, we can do that. But then in August, we may be paying the piper again. As you recall, last August, we added 4 or 5 teachers. We can do that and kind of find the middle ground of, maybe we want to be tight on some and loose on others, and kind of like have that kind of dialogue of how close do you want to call it. So our numbers change, as you know, monthly. We can take another forecast of this next month, roll the numbers forward again, and show you the section sizes and see what you feel like in terms of the sensibilities of where you want to go tighter. We can do that. That's K-5. The middle level and high school level is not as straightforward. It's a team-based decision. For example, at Whitford Middle School, we have 2 teams in grade 6, around 125 students. If we were to get a little smaller, I would recommend go to 1 team and collapse it. Right now, we're not there yet. The high school is driven by what students select. So student selection is in the spring. Unfortunately, our budget's done before the students select their courses. The high school, I can tell you, historically, we're looking at going from 1640-something to like 1580, I want to say. Once again, that's around, I think I was told, 475 courses running in a semester, spread 50-something kids over 475 options. It's not a lot of reduction. The question I would pose to you would be, in the Jamestown conversation before, we had said, if Jamestown leaves, maybe we would raise the threshold of what we would run. Right now, we may say, a college prep course runs if there are more than 15 kids. Maybe you would say, you know what, let's raise that to 18 or 19, and maybe we could save some sections that way if you did that. But until we know what the kids take, we don't know that. So I'm not sure how to forecast cutting sections at the high school until you know the number. But,
Would that be something that we will get information about before it is time to bring up the list that we have to put teachers on every year? Because that would be a more critical thing.
What we could do is, as in the past, sometimes, as you know, when we give out notices that we may not call someone back, we do a broad brush, a couple ELAs, a couple of maths. We cover everything just in case. You could hold some positions out there later than you might normally do, and then see what sections run, and then maybe you could recoup some savings. Also, one change for you is in the new teacher contract, you got one efficiency. We used to be able to reduce by 10 names. If you were a .1, it was a name. .5 was a name. You can now reduce by 7.5 FTEs. That means you could save a .2 here, a .3 here, and make some savings up. So you could be more efficient in how you save at the middle and high school level. That wouldn't apply to the K-5, though. That's a one-to-one correlation. But we could do that, leave some positions out further and not call them back till you're really sure on the schedule.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is I saw your new ads, and whereas before we were about $20,000 over the breakage, now we're up to about $71,000 on the over the breakage.
Talking the Aspen?
Well, not specifically that, but just with your total of what's on that sheet. Yep. And I am also concerned that the number of the items that are on the sheet are adding people. And while that might be okay for 1 year, as we go down, we'll end up paying those benefits every year. Right. Because especially with teachers. And so one of the questions I know I had asked you earlier today was if there's any possibility with the social workers that we wouldn't have to pay somebody benefits, and if,
right.
If this could be a contract.
Still invested. The question was, if we needed social workers, could it be a purchased service? I'm still looking into that, if that could be done.
Is that it?
Yes, those are my questions.
Mr. Mudge again?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on this page's comments because I think they're well taken. In looking at the budget, I think, and you can help me here and explain why this number changed, but I believe we hired 19 staff people since 2010 to 2012 budget. That's 19 staff people. Could you tell us what the breakdown of those staff people were?
Offhand, sitting here right now, I have to look at it. Give me,
Yeah, and that's quite an increase in 2 years. And especially when it's still, everything's going downhill from an environment, from a standpoint. Yeah, I'd like to know that, because I think that is something that Mrs. Page says that we need to understand more clearly, especially in terms of where they needed to meet the basic educational plan.
Yeah, there was quite a few retirements, Bill, that,
Yeah, but the numbers went up, Dick, I think. The actual numbers, if you look at your budget, I don't have mine in front of me, you went up 19 staff positions.
Do you have what category, Bill, you're talking about?
No, it was just, if you look at your budget in the man count or the people count, you'll see that, you know, you had, I think I'm right, I'm not sure, I don't have it in front of me. As I recall, it went up 19.
Ned, do you have an answer on that?
Yeah, page 15 has a summary of all the positions, and that's where you'd be able to see what the actual assignment was in 2010, and then what it's changed to through our suggested 2012.
Did that go up 19 positions?
6091 from 594.5. Roughly 15.
Yeah, I thought I looked at it was 19 positions from 010. So that's a pretty significant increase, I guess.
There's rounding there, too, so.
Excuse me?
I said there's some rounding there in the.
Oh, yeah, I got one of something,
I
but
think it's helpful to go by category. For example, the first category is called school clerk office. I'm asking for a .5 clerk increase at Quinnesset. That's around a 1. I'm thinking if you go each category, it's helpful. That's one of my proposed adds, which you would consider. If you go to the second, it's flat. If you go to custodial, it's flat. Paraprofessionals, up 3. That's in my proposed adds. One proposed add. We have a one-on-one coming online at Stony Lane, a student. We have one para coming out of the ARA grant, and the third one was a proposed add, potentially a DMS. I told you about that last time. Those are the 3 there. And if you go to, forgive me, the print's small, even my reading glasses. So essentially, these are all flat. Looking down for any adds.
well, again, not to drive this to that level here, I'd just like to understand that. And you also mentioned the ARA grants. I thought our ARA funding had been basically pretty well spent, and we don't have any ARA funding left.
That's correct. What happens is,
So,
over the past several years, we've had ARA funds. In districts, in these times, have, in many cases, put many FTEs into the ARA to survive, if you will. We, like most districts, had a lot of people in the grants. We've been pulling them out systematically for the past 2 years, but as the final bell rang for ARA last June 30th, we had one paraprofessional and a .7 speech still in there. So we did our best. I couldn't get them all out, but .7 comes back to us to consider for speech, someone we currently have on the books, in a 1.0 para.
yeah, so if it's an, ARA funding, and it was federal funding, how do we switch back now and say, well, we, the North Kingstown taxpayers, have to pick up those costs?
You don't have to. You can
Okay,
decide
yeah,
to cut
understand,
this.
and I guess that gets back to my other, comment is, what are we, we need to find the baseline. What's our baseline budget and staffing with respect to the, the funding we get, so we understand those things, and
I guess here's the way I could put it to you. The old BEP was something you probably would have liked better. It was quantitative, it was inputs, it was a metric of number of kids, number of people, very clean. This new one's more of an art. It's what you believe is sufficient to get the job done. It's really subjective and a judgment call. That's why you have me to give you a recommendation. When you guys debate that, it's not going to be a hard science now. New BEP is an art form. What's sufficient? That's a very debatable thing.
Yeah, because, I understand that, but I need that help, too, because, for example, nurse teachers, are they part of the BEP? And are they mandated, nurse teachers?
That's state law.
Okay. However, I think the governor relieved us from the requirement of having nurse teachers.
No, they did not.
No.
That was, I think that Governor Kachuri did, I believe.
No, they did not.
Page 27 of the BEP.
Now, I'll look at that.
Social services also page 27.
Okay, so the nurse teachers are a part of the BEP plan?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Could we get a copy of that plan, by the way?
I emailed the whole plan to you last week, this week.
Okay.
If you want a hard copy, we can do that too.
Yeah, please.
Okay, moving on to the CIP. Oh, I'm sorry, Mel.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. I was just going to say to Mr. Mudge that those things and some of those questions was asked in the Budget Committee meeting. And we went through them very thoroughly because I was just more confused than we were and than you are. And what I'd like to say is the school system is mandated. It's not written in words, but we are mandated to have a basic educational plan. That's something we have to have. But getting down to number F, which is, maybe I'm going too fast, am I, Mr. Chair?
I think if we just stay where we are,
Well, that impacts the budget, number F.
I don't know what your number F is.
We've got two different agendas, unfortunately.
Oh, please.
I have a different one, than, so I don't know.
I don't know what your F says.
Wind turbine.
Yeah, okay, then you have the same budget, the same agenda I have.
Uh-huh.
But we're not there yet.
Oh, so we have to wait until we get to each one?
Yeah, why not?
Even though it's on the budget?
Yeah, that has no effect on the budget.
Well, I'll wait then until we get to number F.
Mr.
I won't take
Chairman,
up more time.
Mr. Chairman,
Letter F.
I respond to the comment that Mrs. Benson made, please. I understand that, Mr. Chairman?
Bill, can we make it brief, please, so we can get on with the agenda? Bill, if you had gone to the subcommittee meeting, a lot of these questions would have been answered. You chose
Which
not-
subcommittee meeting is that?
the budget subcommittee. You chose not to
We
be part
can't
of that.
discuss, excuse me, we got three people on the committee. That doesn't mean that somebody in this, somebody who's not on the budget committee cannot ask questions. Are you suggesting that I shouldn't bring up any questions?
No, I'm suggesting that, Bill, you ask a lot of the same questions all the time, and that these questions could have been answered more directly to you in the budget subcommittee.
We certainly haven't been answered satisfactorily tonight.
Yes, Mrs.
Okay?
Benson.
My point of order is that I think you're out of line chastising Mr. Mudge. He is a duly elected member.
Thank you.
I don't think there was any chastisement. It just said, please be
Do you-
brief. And, excuse me, I'm speaking now. And it's up to the chair to run an orderly meeting. He just said if you could please be brief so that it's not just one person dominating the
Well,
meeting. That's all.
well, look,
I mean, I'm
I'll
not
stay
trying
here
to
all
cut
night,
you off.
Mrs. Amonson, but, you know, if I feel that I have a germane question, it's
No one's trying to
You
prevent you
know?
from asking your question. I think you should ask.
okay, well, thank you then. That's all I'm trying to do. But I kind of resent saying, let's be brief. I've heard that too often with the town council, if you can recall, over the years. But my point is, the comment to Mrs. Benson was, you are absolutely right. We need to have and identify a budget that reflects accurately the BEP cost.
That's it.
That's all I suggest, and that we need to do that. We can talk about X, Y, Z, and Q, but when that budget comes forward, we must know what the budget is in terms of the BEP and what isn't, and it should be distinguishable. It should be distinguishable, what's left over in our budget for sports, for transportation, or anything else that isn't in the BEP budget. So I make a motion, Janae, it's still on our budget, that we have the budget developed and presented to us so it clearly indicates all basic educational plan expenditures. And any other expenditures after that, if you may, basic educational plan expenditures, like athletics, like transportation, and whatever else falls into that, because it is certainly not clear to me what our responsibilities are, nor what our choices may be if we get a lack of funding from any source. I'd like to make that motion.
I have a motion. Does it have a second?
Could you restate your motion and bring it together more, because
Yes, I would like to see a budget presented that reflects directly the expenditures of the town and the finance that we have to meet the basic educational plan. The basic educational plan, and then the non-basic educational plan cost, and then the bottom line. So that's basically it. And the reason I'm saying that is we can't cut basic educational requirements. If we have to make cuts, which I hope we don't, then it must become from this other pile of programs of money. And I'm not sure that I understand that.
If I understand your motion correctly, I will second it.
Thank you.
Because that question was brought up, am I allowed to say executive? And I withdrew it. And if I understand you right, what you're saying is you want a budget that reflects the BEP.
Yes, ma'am.
I second that motion. If he can make that motion that short.
Mr. Sabazato?
I was just going to ask the superintendent, what is involved in coming up with something like that, and what
I guess what I'm trying to tell you is the email we gave you tonight, information you emailed today about the 5 or 6 things we found that were contractual, health insurance, et cetera, those are the things outside the scope of the BEP that we can find. If you add those up and subtract it, that's the difference. The rest of the BEP, as I told you, it's not an input-output data process. It's a subjective kind of an art. I'm the superintendent. I'm recommending to you, you have X number of social workers for the budget. You must have social services per page 27. Your conversation can be, we think we're too rich in these categories, we want to knock it back a little bit. But I'm telling you, in my humble opinion, the budget is the BEP minus the thing Mrs. Draper gave you.
No, Dr. Thorpe, please don't, I'm not saying that we want to cut anything. It's that I don't understand what you're recommending. Okay? I'm not suggesting I'm cutting anything. I want to see what you're recommending by state law, because there are some things that maybe we should take an action on. For example, I would like to have this committee send a letter to the governor saying, we don't want to pay $600,000, okay, for charter schools. Now, is that a BEP requirement, or isn't it? You see? So we need to separate the wheat from the chaff so we clearly understand what the two are. That's all I'm saying, is we've got to do that now. And I'll tell you, it's going to be tough. I understand it. But I bet you it hasn't been done in another school district in the state of Rhode Island yet. And it's coming at us.
We can certainly give you, I guess, a 3-column, if you will, something simplistic of, contractual, law, and other. But I was reiterate, it's not a clean quantitative Excel spreadsheet. The example I gave you of assessment systems, that's a web.
I'm not asking you what am I saying? I'm not asking you to justify this. I'm just asking you, what is it? I don't know what it is, but I'm sure if I get my Excel spreadsheet, we can throw it up, we can start taking things off, bing, 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 take them out of the columns and move them over here. So we know when the bottom line budget is $50 million or 60, whatever it is, 50 is for BEP and 10 is basically optional.
No, we're fine.
So I can tell you, I can do my best to give you something to depict law, contractual, and BEP. I'll try to make 3 bins if I can for you.
Yes, that's really where we need to focus, I think.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Yes, I guess one of the things I would want to know is, Bill, are you more interested for the entire budget, or are you interested in just the 15 things that Dr. Thornton has put on it?
The whole package, really. Okay?
I guess I'd be more interested in seeing it in terms of the ads, that you're adding things that you have on.
But, Kim, I don't know what the shopping list is that you made today, okay? We know we're going to add something next year, but how do we break that shopping, even like in terms of today's budget, how do we break the shopping list down that says mandatory and, we'll say optional, or, what am I trying to say, non-mandatory, or discretionary? Because that's what it's going to come down to, right?
Well, in a way, but how the BEP is written, as I recall, it's been a little while since I've read it, but it's going to say things that we're going to need an adequate number of clerks. Mm-hmm. So therefore, when we say that we have 1.5 clerks at the high school, what does that mean? Do we have an adequate? Well, I'm sure the principal would say, no, we would like to have more. So we are not adequate.
Well,
versus, then we can sit here and argue whether it's adequate or not. So I think that's going to be part of the problem of of if we take everything that we already have and we try to fit it to the BEP, that we're going to run into squishy words that really don't give us a whole good feel of if we're matching what we've already spent to the BEP. Now, I understand from what you're saying that you want to be able to then correlate that to say, well, if things aren't absolutely mandated by BEP, that could we cut them?
Well, again, I'm trying to say, what do you think, Dr. Thornton, is the requirement to meet the BEP? And what's left over, because we're going to have a mandatory budget and then a secondary budget that, for all our other things. And I'm not trying to say, don't do this or don't do. I'm not trying to interpret the BEP. I'm just trying to say, under law, we have certain requirements. What is the budget that's associated with that? Simple. I can't say it any more simple than that. And then, of course, next year you can add things, which adds on to that.
Okay. Mrs. Avezzano, then I think we should vote on the motion.
Just briefly, I understand what people are looking to see, but I'm feeling like what the superintendent recommends in his budget is that, I would imagine. I mean, that's how you formulate your budget, isn't it?
Well, no.
The BEP.
The idea is, I'm going to social workers. It's in the BEP. You must have social workers. Whether it's 2 or 4, it's a social worker conversation. It might be helpful, Bill, to talk about class and employee. Teachers of English are in the BEP. All math teachers in the BEP. We can talk about maybe certain classes of employees that are non-BEP. That might be helpful.
Well, what I understand is you got a $60 million budget. Can you tell me $50 million is required to meet the basic educational plan and $10 million is optional for transportation, athletics, and everything else?
That would be helpful.
What I'm saying, it's not that simple, Bill.
But it's got to be that simple.
The BEP, it could be $50 million, it could be $35 million.
But you have to tell us, Dr. Thornton, that's all I'm saying.
I told you, my budget was that.
Dr. Thornton, you have not distinguished between your expenditures for the BEP and your discretionary expenditures for athletics,
I could explain
for
further.
band,
If I could
music, the
explain further.
extracurriculars.
K-5 has so many teachers, say
I don't,
80
Doctor,
teachers.
we're going,
If I could finish. If you want 80 teachers, that's fine. If you want to have 75, that's fine. Is it adequate? If the class size is too big. So to say it's a fixed number, it doesn't work that way. It's subjective.
so you're telling me nobody in the state of Rhode Island can match up a budget at the local level to the basic educational plan?
We absolutely can. Ours is.
Yours is not.
I disagree.
Doctor, you have submitted a $60 million, what is the number this year? I don't have it in front of me. The budget for 12?
Don't you do that?
What is the final number, 57,
It's
60 million?
$59,221,000.
Can you distinguish of the $59 million, specifically the amount that's required for basic educational plan, and then the non-discretionary funds that we have and requirements to provide transportation, athletics, extracurricular activities, and whatever else is not covered in the BEP plan?
Yes, I can.
And what would that number be?
Specifically, and I will address transportation first, because we had that initial reaction when we went through this, the first go-round. In RIGL 1621, I believe it is, they have a copy of it. We found it says, transportation for general ed services shall be provided so as not to be impractical to the children that have to be delivered to school. What is impractical? We couldn't come up with a clear-cut answer to that question. Therefore, we omitted that from the BEP list. That said, we have 6 items. Those items are health care insurance. Until 2014, federal legislation does not kick in requiring health care insurance for employees. There is no state law that we are aware of that requires health care insurance for employees. There are contractual obligations which cease with each contract as they come up. There is non-productive time. We are not aware of anything in Rhode Island general laws or federal law that require the school committee to provide non-productive time pay. That includes sick time, vacation time, holidays. Extracurricular activities. We're not aware of anything in the basic education plan for Function 213 that requires those services. Substitutes. Those are Object Code 5115, or 1115, excluding PD. PD is a covered service under the plan, on the basic education plan. However, about $600,000 in substitute salaries does not exist there. Cafeteria loss. Currently, the fund balance is applied to Fund 6001. Approximately $125,000 is envisioned for this year. It could be $65,000 next year if we achieve our budget goals. And life insurance benefit. That is object code 52102, estimated to be approximately $35,000 for next year. Those total up to $9,810,000, and those are the items that we could find within our budget that would not be impacted by either legal requirements, meaning Rhode Island general law or federal law, or the basic education plan. Now, that is not to say everything else is open to negotiation as to what level of service is provided. But these were the specific items we could find that could be omitted and would not impact either the basic education plan or federal or Rhode Island state law.
So simply, I'm saying is, can I see that on the piece of paper that says, this is, these programs are required for, the basic education plan, and these programs aren't. Let's just put it in writing so we can follow that. But I would also ask one of you is the program, the federal program of providing early screening diagnostic testing for the kids, called Medicare, is that part of the basic education plan?
Medicare would be covered at this point in time under UCOA, and what they've directed us to do per UCOA is all funding for those services is to go in as a general revenue item.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, we're implementing a program that has nothing to do with teaching. That's to provide preschool services, to screen the kids, to prepare them for schools, as I understand it. That's about $1,200,000. I don't see that program anywhere in the budget. So my question again is that program, which we have to get 50% reimbursement on, is that program a requirement of the basic educational program?
Well, relative to the services that are provided to the children, I'm not sure that we would exclude children requiring those services.
What does a state and federal law say those services are? Are they part of our budget?
Mr. Mudge?
They're a medical service.
They're part of IDEA, which is a federal statute, IDEA 2004. So all of those services that you're talking about come under federal regulation, federal code and federal regulations.
So are they, again, thank you. That's good. Are they in our current budget? Are they in the federal budget under, like, grants?
The federal IDEA grant, you'd find that in that location.
I don't think so.
If I could continue, I would propose they are part of learning. If kids aren't ready to learn, they can't learn. So I would contend it is part of education and learning.
Well, again, isn't it a federal program?
It's a federal requirement and a federal statute and a federal regulation. But one of the things you're doing, Mr. Mudge, is you're limiting your discussion to what's required under the BEP. Whenever a forensic audit is done on a school department budget, if a school department, for example, is going to a Carullo action or there's a deficit, you have to look at the BEP, you have to look at contractual obligations, and you have to look at statute. So to say what's in the BEP and everything else is optional, that's not a fair assessment. What's under the BEP, what's under statute, what's under contract?
I would say, though, that in fact, if you look at the statute, our participation in that program is voluntary.
Your participation in what program is voluntary?
In the providing the, I think, Title 29, Title 19, services for early screening and diagnosis, that is a volunteer program that we sign up for. It is not a mandatory program.
I guess the question I
I'll
have
find is mandatory.
Absolutely not. If you look at the statute and the state statute, look at the state statute and the federal statute, it is a requirement that the town of North Kingstown and the school committee agrees to.
I guess the question
I would
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mrs. Advisano.
I would like this meeting to go back to a school committee meeting where people raise their hands, and it's not just a dialogue between two people. We've got a motion and a second on the table, and it's becoming just a dialogue between two people. I ask that we go back to the order of the meeting.
Could,
If people are recognized.
Yes.
Mr.
Actually, I'd like to have the question
Point of
moved.
order.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. When you hold up your hand, if you're recognized, some of this could have been eliminated. It's very hard the way these tables are set, because you got school committees sitting cat-a-corner this way, and the people in charge are sitting in the middle with their eyes fixed on the audience. So that is my point of order. But we need to go back to the regular thing, because if I must say so, in all this, you guys have got some, and girls, all of us, we got some fancy language here, and it's very, very confusing to people, and it's almost just like I'm going to snowball you. So that's what I have to say, and we can go back to the agenda, and I think we left off at...
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please.
There is already a motion and a second.
What is the motion? I don't even
We
recall.
have a motion and a second. Let the secretary read it back.
That was the motion on the budget.
Yes.
Would the clerk please read back the motion?
Bill Mudge made a motion that we have a budget reflecting all BE expenditures and then non-BEP expenditures and then the bottom line. That was seconded by Mel Benson.
Yes, that entails 3 motions, 3 different budgets.
So can we have a vote? Would all those in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
No?
No.
Okay, motion is defeated. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
I'd make a motion that we ask our council to look into the Medicaid issue that we just discussed and to provide us some guidance as to whether we have an obligation, okay, or is it a volunteer program that we have agreed to enter into, okay, with the Department of Education and the federal government. I think we need to clarify
I think we
that.
can, Bill, I think we can just ask for that. I don't think we need a motion on that.
I need clarification. Are you asking if our Medicaid program is required, or if our Child Find program is
No,
required?
I'm asking if the services provided under Title, I think, 19 to 29 of the Social Security Act, known as the Medicaid reimbursement program, if you may, which provides early screening and periodic screening and diagnostic and so forth of our preschool children, is a service we are providing, okay, a medical service, not an educational service, a medical service to evaluate our children, okay, to determine what they need from an educational standpoint when they enter into our system.
That's Child Find.
Well, I don't know what it is. All I can say is if you look at the program, you can find it on the web, and I think it's called Medicaid.
But you're asking, the screening is, it's Child Find. That's the screening.
If we had
If
I had a...
Excuse me, one person at a time, please.
Yeah, if I had state law here, I could give, I will send you the state law. How's that? And ask for your guidance.
You can send me the state law, but Child Find is it's under a federal program, so.
Oh, yeah, so
send me
it's
what you
Medicaid,
have.
yeah, that's what
Send
we're
me what
getting
you
at.
have. All right.
Okay, so we understand that it's that one particular program, and I will put it in writing and send it to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to step out of order because we got some people in the audience that would like to hear item H on my agenda. The item would be for RFPs to be sought for 4 different services: food services, minibuses, janitorial, and outside grounds. First, I would like to ask the superintendent his opinion on any of the 4 items.
You had a conversation on this, a meeting back, I believe, under new business. You broached the subject. To me, certainly we're always looking to get efficiencies and trying to do a cost comparison. To me, out of the 4 of these, I would have interest in looking further at two of them, just to get a comparable of what the market would bear. And in my recommendation, I would be curious to pursue an RFP for the minibuses and janitorial.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thornton. Mrs. Avasato?
Just very briefly, most of the committee members were saying that we were looking at getting information and having all the facts in front of us. Although I understand the superintendent's looking at two areas, it seems like we would just, if it's just for informational purposes only, that we would get all four. That's just my thought.
Excuse me just a second, Mrs. Benson, if you would. This is for information gathering. This is not to actually contract for services, okay? This is just to go out and find out what the services would cost on the outside market, so that we then have that information available as a committee. Now, Mrs. Benson.
I would like to know if it would be possible if the secretary, the parliamentarian, the attorney, could go back. We are generating the same conversation that we had last school committee meeting. And somewhere, I think I made the motion with the guidance of the attorney, that we not go out RFPs. Am I correct, Madam Attorney? Because you asked me.
Right, you and I had a conversation. You said you were against this, and I understand that. And at the last agenda, it was under new business. And I explained to you that under new business, you can't make a motion at that point. It would have to be put on for tonight's agenda, and at this agenda, you can make a motion not to go out to bid.
Okay, so it will, under unfinished business.
You can make a motion to go out to bid or to not go out to bid, yes.
Okay, and I have another question for the superintendent, Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Yes.
You recommended 2 out of the list.
Yes.
What was your reasoning, not a preamble, but what was your reason in a concise movement why you just recommended the 2 when you came up with 4 in the beginning?
Well, first of all, I didn't come up with 4 in the beginning. That was not my coming up with the 4.
Why do we have this like that?
My concise answer would be, I think there may be some efficiencies in those 2 categories that merit looking at, given the scale of the operations. Some 30-some-odd employees in janitorial, some 30-some-odd employees in the minibuses. That's the short answer.
Okay, if you go back and you check the minutes, I think at that meeting, I made the point of saying we think globally, but we hire locally. And if you say you didn't put them on the agenda, it's a dead issue.
No, it's not a dead issue.
And I make a motion, who placed these on the agenda?
I did.
And what was your rationale for placing them on the agenda?
My rationale, quite frankly, is to find out information about the available services in the open market so that we would have the opportunity to look at current costs and weigh the pros and cons as to the services that we are now being provided versus what we can get on the open market. As far as why the 4 are on there, because they're all 4 are non-educational, and this goes back to possibly Mr. Mudge's conversation earlier when we start talking about the BEP. We're in the education business. We have to look at options. We have to see how we preserve the education program first and what other things we can look at as options in order to make our budget work, Mrs. Benson. So this is for information gathering so we can go forward. Mr. Mudge.
I wasn't through with mine. Dialogue with you. So
Yes,
would you permit me to ask you another
Yes,
question?
Mrs. Benson.
If you just wanted it for informational purposes, and the attorney just said that we could make a motion, am I correct, attorney?
Yes, you can make a motion.
Make a motion, absolutely. because it's now under old unfinished business, and that's exactly what's in the minutes, is what we discussed at the last meeting.
Okay, I would like to make a motion
This is a little over my head, and
that
I don't have the information to back myself.
item
Excuse me
A,
just a second. Mr. Mudge,
Sir,
Mrs. Benson has the floor. If you could please allow her.
I apologize. I
Thank you.
trying to
Go ahead,
help our
Mrs. Benson.
student over here.
This is getting to be something.
I was trying to help our students, so I apologize.
Can I make a motion now,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair? I make a motion that out for bid A, B, C, and D will not go out to make a comparison for this year in the budget. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think I do, Mrs. Benson.
Okay, what I'm saying, for school year 11 and 12, they do not go out for a RFP until we have had the school year 11 and 12 to educate the popularity and the people in the town as it's related to. That may not need to go in, but I'm giving you my rationale for it.
Is there a second for Mrs. Benson's motion?
I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Is there any discussion on Mrs. Benson's motion?
Yes, I have some.
Please.
I in principle, will never have a problem with looking at the efficient operations of our school system. I think we need to do that all the time, and we should do that. But with that said, and again, I'm not sure what the out to bid means, but I think if you're
That's the
saying,
question.
I want to look or bring efficiency experts in to see if we're overstaffed, like Dr. Thornton has suggested, his custodial or his minibus, services may be overstaffed. I fully support that. I fully support an evaluation of our staffing from an efficiency standpoint. But I don't support the issue of bidding out, the whole service. I think that should be held in abeyance until after we first know if we are efficient and if we can correct any of these problems or inefficiencies, in-house. That's basically my comment. And if this was, again, I don't know what out the bid is. If these were efficiency studies, not the, again, for see if we're lean and mean, that's fine. But not to go farther than that, in my opinion.
Mrs. Avisado.
I think what Mr. Mudge just said and the motion and the item on the agenda are not incompatible. I think getting an RFP and hearing what outside groups may do the same job for gives you some of that information. It's just an observation.
Well, Mrs. Benson.
I have a question for our finance director. Isn't there expense associated with sending out RFPs?
Yes.
The next question I have for you, so it can be clear, is we're talking about the 11-12 school year, and this is January. If we send out an RFP, how would we handle this with what Mr. Mudge said? And I'm for efficiency, but you all have made some good plays on words in Webster's dictionary when it's very simple. You didn't tell us whether you want to hire these people for the upcoming school year, and you talk about RFPs, and you said there's expense with it. We're talking about this year's budget, and that's what I have to say.
Mr. Mudge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to clarify something for Mrs. Avanzano is that I do not believe that this supports what we really need to do. I have a little background in contracting, And what you'll see is, there's always a low bidder, and they'll say anything or give you anything. And I can understand that. But I need to know what the level of effort is. That's what I'm asking for. For example, I think we have a baseline level of effort for this high school. There was a study done, I don't know, just before, or, when the high school was built, that said, we need X amount of people. Now, it's not just people, because what they say is, with this equipment, this efficiency of equipment plus the people, this is what the staffing would be. Now, if you want to take that then and say, I'm going to contract this out, and you know what your in-house costs are, now you can make some comparisons. So we're ahead of the game, I'm suggesting, okay? And we can't rely on outside contractors coming in and say, name that tune. I'll do it in 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Let's find out what our baseline is. Let's find out, again, we can go back, and I think we can look that up, look at the study and see if the study for the high school, for example, is consistent, the hiring and the number of people are consistent with what we had several years ago. In addition, I think Mr. Welsh has, done a pretty good job here, too. We should be looking to, from a school standpoint, from a town standpoint, for example, to look at the grounds maintenance and integrating that with the golf course, with the other parks and recs, and see what the most efficient operation is from the entire town. Okay? So it's a most efficient operation or organization you need to do. Then you have an understanding on what you're contracting out for. And I submit that if that's the intent of the going out to bid, then I would support that. But I'm not sure, because I haven't seen these. I'm not sure what the intent is. So,
Bill, the second part of your argument or discussion, if you will, on consolidating with the grounds people in the town, that's not an option available to us at this point in time, because we have two different unions representing the town and the school department.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just can't believe that can't be worked for. And what you're saying is, I was looking at state law, even federal law today, town charter, whatever I was looking at, and in there it does say the school committee may contract out to the town for services. I don't care. Suppose we contract out, suppose the town bids on it, like another company. We've had that. The federal government used to have a program where the federal government would actually bid on work that was going out to contractors, and many times the federal government contract won. The employees won. So it's a matter of, apples and apples and oranges and oranges. And I suggest that we really need to examine the process. And I honestly, I understand what you're saying. We may have a contract problem, but I wouldn't even worry about that at this time. I would look at what the most efficient organization would be for the town and the community and the savings, and then look at the next step. I would not discount looking and evaluating what these expenditures are. I'm sure there's ways to overcome those things.
Okay. Mrs. Benson?
I'm sorry you weren't in attendance with our committee this evening, but this morning, afternoon. But I brought up the question of fear. Fear.
Does this got something to do with your motion?
Yes, it has. I wouldn't speak on it if it didn't have anything to do with that. I brought up the thing of fear. And that's the driving force behind all of these. In a roundabout way, it was said, we got our union contracts coming up. Now, the motion I made, and if it's defeated, well and good. If it's defeated. But to be able to send these people's letters, and I know exactly what you're working on, because in February, everybody that's going to get laid off has to receive a letter. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. Know exactly what you're working on. And I maintain that if the schools are going to be supported by the taxpayers, yes, we are no employment agent. We're going to send out the bid for all of these things. Let's include the numbers of supervisors and people that are connected with this and look for efficiency, and maybe we'll have some more laying off to do. But is this for the 11-12 school year? You said it was your suggestion.
That's right. It's for the budget that we're working on, right?
What is the budget year we're working on?
11-12.
That's what I wanted to hear you say. For the 11-12 school year.
Right.
And Dr. Thorne, does the workers under this have to be notified by state law when it says people have to be notified?
We notify teachers at a certain calendar date in
So
the winter,
auxiliary workers don't come under that.
not the same notification standards as teachers, no.
I call these auxiliary people. I'm not that old, but we have the same vocabulary, we have the same interest in the education of the children. The terminology changes quite a bit. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mudge?
I have one more thing.
I'm not sure I'm straying here, but, you know, Mr. Chairman, I kind of...
Excuse me, Mr. Mudge. Mrs. Benson has informed me that she's not done.
Oh, sorry.
And what I want to ask, and I asked you once before, you said you put these on.
That's correct. That's correct.
And you stated that you put them on in order to see how we could save money.
I did not say that.
Well, put it in everyday language. Why did you
How many times am I going to have to say this? Is this the last time?
You already said it.
You the chairman?
I called the question, Mr. Chairman, I called the question, and that was already answered, and I'd also just like to say, I don't think that we need to be accusatory or negative in our tone. We're just trying to do our jobs as school committee people. Let's not make us feel guilty that Mr., excuse me, let me finish my sentence, please. That Mr. Welsh is trying to explore the ways in which the school committee can find efficiencies, and he's explained that. So I think we should call the question.
You need to make a motion to call the question. There needs to be a second, and then the motion is not
Motion to
debatable.
call the question.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay.
I did have my hand up before we did that, Mr.
Question's
Chairman,
called.
when I was interrupted.
The question's been called, Mr. Mudge.
Yeah, well,
Okay, what is the motion that you read?
It's your motion.
My motion was
To-
to remove food service, minibus, janitorial, and outside grounds from having to receive, what did you say, Ned? That's why I sent you to college, to remember. RFP,
An RFP, you don't want to go up
RFP.
to bid.
Request for proposal.
a request for a proposal.
Okay, I'd like a roll call vote on this, please.
Would
May
you
I have-
read it so we'll know what we're voting on?
Point of order, before we do this is a double negative. We've got a motion not to go out to bid. So just
That's
keep that in
exactly what
mind.
it
No,
is,
yes.
triple negative.
Right.
If it's a yes.
Your motion is not to go out to bid. So if the majority votes yes, then you don't go out to bid.
That's right. And let's have a roll call vote.
point of order.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
I believe that in this motion that Mrs. Benson tied that to something in fiscal year 11 and 12.
I certainly
In
did.
terms of not doing this for a period of time. I thought I heard that, but...
That is exactly, but when things get heard down on that other end, they have a way of getting twisted.
Okay, so why don't we just try to clarify the motion if we
Just a
could?
second, Mr. Mudge.
Want me to read the motion? The
Yes,
motion
please.
that Mel Benson made was that the item out to bid, A, B, C, D, will not go out to bid to make a comparison for this year in the budget. That if they don't go for RFP till we've had this school year.
School year 11 and 12.
Was it 11 and 12?
Okay, so now everyone knows what the motion is, and a vote yes is to vote in favor of Mrs. Benson's motion. If I could please have a roll call vote.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page,
No.
Joe Thompson,
No.
Richard Welsh,
No?
Linda Avanzato,
No?
Bill Boyd Benson.
Yes.
Okay, motion fails 4-2.
Thank you.
Now, ladies,
Mrs. Page?
get your application at Burger King.
Well, I'm not in favor of going out on all four because we've had a conversation with Mr. Draper about a year and a half ago about taking things out as an RFP that we aren't really willing to follow up on. And since the superintendent has made the recommendation on two of the services but not the other two, I would make the motion that we follow his recommendation because I really don't see the point in going out for something that we wouldn't follow through on. And I wouldn't vote for to follow through on the other two. So, and I don't have any idea on the two that the superintendent has given us a suggestion, but it would be the sort of thing of, I think it would be good for us to at least be able to have the conversation and be able to find out if we would be able to save any efficiencies.
I'll
So,
second
I made a
that.
motion.
Could I ask you one question
Yes.
on your motion? Would you object to voting on each one individually?
If you would like to do it that way.
It's your motion. I'm asking if you would object to doing it that way.
Okay, if you would like to, I can make the motion that we vote on each one of these individually.
Second.
Okay. There's been
So
a
I withdrew my first motion, Lorraine, and.
I withdrew my second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to vote on each item individually. Mr. Mudge, you've had your hand up?
Yeah, and I don't really object to that, but, kind of inconsistent here. We think we have 4 areas that we think we may save money on. It's kind of presumptuous to think that we would not do something if the economics show that we can save a substantial amount of money. Now, I don't know why we feel that on a couple of these issues, or what they even are, that we don't have the will to follow through on something. Again, Mr. Chairman, I am not going to vote to go out to bid in terms of, other companies, okay, just coming in and bid this. I fully support, okay, a bid that would include the evaluation of the operation, okay? For example, I would suggest maybe for under $5,000, you could have a sole source bid to former Transportation Director Cattell, who could provide his expertise and guidance to us, okay, to see if, and determine if we are, lean and mean, okay? And I guess that's what I'm saying, for each of these things. Then we can take the next step, okay? And I think that's an orderly process to get to where you'd like to get to, myself.
Mrs. Page?
Well, that would be good, except for that what we're making the motion on is for the RFP, and that's not the same thing. So it would basically be, you'd be making the decision not on how can you improve your efficiencies, but the RFP would be saying, can you do this and can you do this better? And I've said here many times I wouldn't do that for food services. So that was what my original motion was. I don't have any problems in voting for those separately, but I would not vote to take the time to go out for an RFP for food services or the outside grounds, because I'm not going to follow through that in the end. And so I don't feel as if we don't want our RFPs to be just like, oh, there's North Kingstown. They're always asking for a bid on something, but they're not really going to follow through. So if I'm not going to follow through, I'm not going to ask somebody to take their time to draw up a bid.
Well, you're prejudging your outcome, and by the way, I fully support our food services department. I'll be the last to vote against, this thing going out the contract. However, are there some savings, mean and lean? Okay, are we operating efficiently? Are we paying full-time benefits for certain people that are part-time that we don't have to? Those are the decisions we have to look at. Now, that doesn't have to go out to bid, but we should still look at the efficiency of our operation. And I would look at that, and at the cafeteria, are we lean and mean? in each one of these and take that approach and then come back and say, okay, this is what we're going to do with this information.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, we had a presentation last year, and this might be a benefit to go and talk to the food services director, Trish Cawley, but she gave us a very good presentation about a year ago on the areas that where we could save money and what her proposals were. And so I feel like we've had that done. And so I'm not saying that I need to go out and do it again, because I feel like I've had the presentation, she's given me that, and we voted at that time to go ahead and step forward with doing those things. So that would be another reason why I'd say, well, we've done that. And if you want to go back and talk to her about those, she had a presentation written up that you can get that again, and that would be what it would just be a good thing to then satisfy your due diligence to be able to say, okay, here it is, now I know what needs to be done and what has been done.
Mrs. Avocado?
Kim, based on what you were saying earlier in your conversation with Mr. Draper, that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of vendors getting RFPs and realizing that we're not really serious about what we're doing. So is there a motion? There's no motion on the table right now, is there?
Yeah.
Yes, there is. You did make a motion for the...
Yes, and you
to vote?
seconded it.
Individual item.
Okay. Oh, I'd like to go back to the previous motion that you
Well,
made earlier.
you can still vote it down. That's just what we do. When we take them individually, you can still vote them down.
I understand, but I mean, I think it would be easier to do it in one vote, but that's just, okay.
Yes, Mrs. Benson?
Are we still in the stage of discussing a motion?
Yes.
You're absolutely right. The cafeteria director did come in.
I got to be on the move.
And we saw it. In fact, there was a great amount of praise from behind this table at her fixing meals for the senior center. You're absolutely right. And the whole question has been, and a lot of this discussion could have been saved if you'd have just spoke up and mentioned what you said before. Because I'm not for, I'm going to make a pitch for minibuses. They haul our most precious cargo, and that is the children with educational deficiencies. And that's our most precious.
Mr. Mudge?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That is our most precious cargo. So we ought to quit kidding ourselves. That's what we're doing up here.
Mr. Mudge?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on Mrs. Page's rationale here. I just had a wonderful 2 days at Bryant, at college, that went over a lot of these things. And I think I've said it before and it was reiterated over the weekend, was you need to ask questions and you need to get other eyes to look at that. Just because, and she's a wonderful woman, the head director of the cafeteria is giving you an input. I believe you need other eyes to do that. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Whether it's that or anything else. And that's what I'm suggesting for each one of these things. Get some outside eyes to look at the efficiencies. There are gazillions of people that can do that and do it very, fairly quickly. And it's pretty tough when somebody's a judge, jury, and execution at some point in time. When do you believe them? And I'm not suggesting they're not, but there are other people that can look at things and view things differently, and that's what I think we need to do.
Okay, can we move the question, please? We have a vote on food services. All in favor of having food services go out for bid, say aye, please. All opposed, say aye, please. Nay.
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 Nay instead of aye.
Food services will not go out for bid.
Okay.
Could I please have a vote to go out for the minibuses? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. We will go out for minibuses.
Could we have a roll call? vote so that each person would be able to
Bill and
answer
Bill
to the
voted no.
community?
May I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure I know what I'm voting on, to be honest with you.
Really?
Could you please define what going out, I haven't seen any RFPs, and what do we mean by going out to bid for what purpose?
We explained that, if I may, Mr. Chairman. We explained that at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, and basically, we are going to be entering contract negotiations with all of these employees.
That's the key.
And if we are going to at all consider outsourcing, we need to have a comparison, we need to have an RFP, we need to have a bid in hand to say, we can outsource because we can save X amount of dollars as opposed to keeping these people in school and in the bargaining unit and on staff. So the purpose of the RFP was to upfront find out which areas this committee would want to possibly outsource. If we don't have these RFPs ahead of time, then we can't negotiate that when we enter negotiations with the ESP bargaining unit.
Okay, thank you.
So we're contracting out the whole enchilada, period.
What's that, please?
I said Joe.
Joe, you haven't spoken in a while.
I assume you're going to get to the janitorial?
Yes.
It's next.
That's next.
My sense of the town is that we could possibly find some people at the town council who might want to be included in such an RFP. Is there some way that we can modify what we're doing, or is this process too far down the road to?
We'd have to look into that. If they want to join in, we'd have to ask, see what the legal implications might be because of contracts, et cetera, when theirs are up versus when ours is.
If we go out for this RFP on the janitorial, it's going to be just the school committee. It's just the school buildings themselves then.
Right.
That's all we're talking about.
Right.
And we're going, as I understand it, we're going to go out, we're going to ask different companies to come in and tell us how much money they will charge us to do the work that we're now paying for the
That's right.
inside. We don't have to go with them. We're
Right.
not required to go
Right.
with them. We then go into negotiations with our inside people, and possibly we might find a way of continuing these people on.
That's correct.
Despite the RFP.
That's correct. You're going to review the information that comes back as a committee, and you're going to make value judgments based on what we're getting now versus what an outside source might give us. It may very well be that we are more than satisfied with what it is costing us for the service that it is, and so therefore, nothing will change.
Thank you.
But without this information, I don't know how you make an intelligent decision along those lines.
I agree. I'm ready to vote.
Yes, Mrs. Abizabi.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for bringing that to our attention about the town council. And that's a good area I think we should explore with them. I think that we shouldn't hold off on what we're doing, but I don't know if that prevents us from talking to them about putting out another joint RFP, and I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Okay, so I'd like to take a vote on janitorial, please.
And what is the vote, what does yes and no mean here?
Yes would be to go out for an RFP, no would be not to. So all those in favor of going out for a vote on janitorial, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, we'll go out for bid on janitorial. On the outside grounds, all those in favor, say aye.
That was 4-2.
Oh, okay, 4-2. Okay. You voted against it?
Yes,
Okay.
on outside
Okay.
services.
Outside grounds, maintenance, all those in favor, say aye.
No.
No, it was aye. The no question hasn't been asked
All
yet.
right, sorry, I jumped the gun.
Those not in favor say nay.
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 Okay, we're not going out for that. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Maybe I should save it for school committee comments.
I can't, since I don't know your question.
Okay, I know you don't. That's why I'm going to say it. How in God's name can you sit here and say we won't have anything to compare when we go into negotiation if this is not a fear tactic? we've been doing these 4 items for years, and you keep bringing up negotiations.
You keep on bringing up negotiations.
No, you said it. I haven't brought up negotiations.
Point of order,
one
Mr.
time.
Chairman, point of order. The
Yes,
motion,
Mrs. Avisano.
the motion has already been taken and it's been voted on, and we've had a lot of conversation about it. It's getting late.
Okay, getting back on schedule,
Shouldn't have run for school committee.
the
if you didn't want to
CIP,
stay long
existing
enough to
bond,
discuss
future
something.
bond. Anything on that, Dr. Thornton?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Website update, Dr. Thornton.
I don't mind
Yes.
postponing it.
Given the lateness of the hour,
If you can't stay
I
and
can move
discuss
that to
it.
the next agenda.
Okay. The Wind Turbine School Bond Subcommittee. I've asked that, that we put this on the agenda for the purposes of having 2 school committee people on a bond issue committee that will work with the folks from the community as well as the people from facilities management in order to put together a program that will make the public aware of both bond issues, which will be voted on separately. The wind turbine would be a separate issue, and the school repair bond would be a separate issue. So it's 2 different bonds, but they have a lot of commonality, if you will, on information in order to go forward. So I'm asking for 2 volunteers who would serve on that committee with the public and the facilities management people. Mrs. Avisano? I need one more volunteer, please. I'll serve on it. $27 million bond issue, and no one here has any interest except Linda and myself.
Mr.
Well, that's not exactly true.
Mr. Chairman,
So am I.
Mr. Chairman,
That's not the case to say that we are not interested in a $27 million bond issue no more than you and Mrs. Arizona.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
it was an unfortunate statement you made because, I'm concerned, and I just want to go on record to say I am categorically against both of these bonds. I have reviewed some of these, and I think it's inappropriate. I think we're right back to where we were when we had this high school project with the bond that's going out for the school buildings. I don't think the research is adequate. I don't think the justification is adequate. And as far as the wind tunnel is concerned, I would say that we ought to just kill that thing right now. We're not going to go anywhere with it. And I think you'll see that there's a moratorium on these things as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you,
now,
Mr. Mudge.
So I'm up front with you, okay, that I do not support these as they're currently proposed.
Okay.
I'm sure you wouldn't want me on a committee if I was like that.
No, actually, I would want you on the committee because the way of getting these approved is to take people's objections and handling them, not ignoring them. So I disagree with you.
Job of handling it, you encourage the whole committee and decide what we are interested.
There must be a reason why you don't want to wait to be recognized, Mrs. Benson. You just want to talk. Did you run your classroom that way? You let people talk without
I
being...
got all kind of honors for running my class.
Okay.
Did you run your business this way?
Okay, the next subcommittee is for topics in educational opportunities in the school district, which would run from K through 12. This would be a public subcommittee with people from the community, staff, teachers, administration, school committee members, and business community members. And again, I'd be looking for 2 members from the school committee that might be interested in being on this committee to meet, to talk about opportunities present and future.
Education is my field, and I'll serve on that one.
Yeah.
If you
Kim,
think I'm qualified.
No, I wasn't going to raise my hand. I'm on 3 committees already that I chair too. But my question was, do we have to approve the charge for the committee?
Oh, I guess, yeah, probably.
I mean, usually we approve the charge of the committee, and I just didn't know if we needed any, I know that Lorene mailed that out to us, and I'm
It's in here.
remembering which email it came in.
I don't blame you, laugh, Ned.
Here it is. I got it.
You've got it? Okay, I don't have it for some reason.
I know I do, but like I said,
Yeah.
I just don't see where. Yeah, could I take a look at your charge for a moment? Thank you. Rather than fool around with it. Thanks. Okay, the charge was to meet the members of the community, including business community, to determine what changes might be made to our overall education, K through 12. This should take into consideration the changing economy and employment opportunities for the future as to prepare our students for employment in the 21st century. So this is pretty wide, is what I didn't know if this was supposed to be educational opportunities for adult education as well as K through 12?
All educational opportunities that we present in the district.
And so this would also therefore include
Vocational education.
well, that was my question, is this more of a stress on vocational education, or does this have more of a stress on what topics should be in our schools? Because I wasn't sure when I read it.
Well, the way I viewed it, quite frankly, if you go to 16.2 and you look at one of the responsibilities for a school committee is to make sure that the educational program meets the needs of the community. That's pretty much the way it's stated in 16.2. So by having a committee like this, it gives the community an opportunity to come forward and talk about what they see and what they would like to see as educational opportunities offered by the school district. It then gives us the impetus to go forward and talk with administration and, if need be, RIDE about what our community is suggesting to us that we need. Vocational education is one of them. Adult education may be another. But in terms of the whole educational program from K through 12, what's the future employment opportunities? Are we educating for opportunities that no longer exist or won't exist by the time the kids get out of high school? I mean, you know, I think it's important to have the community support your program, and this is why I suggested this as a subcommittee.
Can I go?
Yeah, you finish, and I have a question.
I like the idea. The only thing I was thinking is that there might need to be a little more specificity in what they're to do. And the only other thing is I would question as to why we would need 2 school committee members. I would have said that 1 was plenty. Or we're just going to all spread ourselves a little thin.
Maybe. I like Mrs. Page's ideas. Do you want to try and incorporate that into and vote on it at the next meeting? I like your idea of a subcommittee, of this particular subcommittee.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, Kim, and my thought was in suggesting was that not always can everybody make every meeting, and it gives you an opportunity to have one person there if another one has a conflict. But whatever is your pleasure. Mrs. Benson.
I was just going to ask you, they just had the Links representative and the people from Electric Boat, and now that you went in to explain it in our guidance council, maybe those are the people who should be on the committee. And I will readily withdraw, because I see you, as Kim said, you're being a little bit too broad, whether it's adult education, vocational education, or what.
I'm not setting the agenda. I'm not trying to set the agenda.
Well, you set up the committee.
When?
You said it was your idea.
Are you going to let me say something, Mrs. Benson?
Are you going to let me say something?
You have been saying.
And you have been saying so. So let's make the trash screw. They say it's going to be a sideshow. Let's give it to them. So you determine on it.
As far as I'm concerned, the committee itself will determine what they want to talk about and what they bring forward. I gave you examples of some of the things that they might look at and then make recommendations to the school committee.
Well, Madam Secretary, please remove my name. I withdraw from the committee. I volunteer.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to serve on this subcommittee?
Why don't we make sure that we have the proposal down, and then we can do that next time?
Fine.
That would be great.
Okay.
I like this committee. I think it'll work well.
Okay. I've already spoken to Martha Pugh, who has said that she definitely would like to be on it. Assistant Superintendent Phil Auger, Dr. Auger, said he would like to be on it.
I think those two is sufficient.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
I wouldn't mind having this as something, say, every 2 months be on an agenda, and I would be happy to report out from that committee, whether that requires school committee members' time on the committee or not, but just have like a regular check-in from the work that is happening.
Okay.
So you're all aware of it and have input.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Auger.
Mr. West, may I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
I like what you said, Dr. O.J. I will readily, I volunteered as a school committee, give all my support as a school committee for you to take that. And that's it.
Okay, we're almost up to closing time. We have one policy, BE, school committee meetings. Kim?
Yeah, there's, the policy committee brought this up after Director Thornton put it on our agenda, and the only change that is proposed here is on page 3, and it is that the agendas would be prepared for the school committee meeting. Right now, they're prepared by the superintendent and the committee chairperson, and this would add 3 words. It would add "and vice chairman." This is actually something that Dick has already started informally, so the policy would merely be just basically going along with what Dick has already started. So unless there is any further questions, I would make a motion that we approve the amendments to BE.
I second that motion, and I congratulate the chair on implementing that already.
I second that motion.
Kim, did you also, I'm sorry, I lost track of everything that you said. Did you also tell them the response from the attorney?
Just that when we had, Dr. Thornton, when we discussed this, had a question about if there was any sort of question as to what went on the agenda, what did the attorney say, or how would we break that? My suggestion was that it was prepared by the agenda was supposed to be prepared by the superintendent, and it was in cooperation with us. Ms. Carroll, from as far as I heard, stated that if there was a disagreement among the school committee members, that the chairperson would break the tie.
Right. The superintendent
And
is
that,
not involved in
right, and that's because a school committee meeting is a meeting of the school committee. He's making recommendations to you as to what gets put on the agenda, but it's your agenda because it's your committee, and he serves at your pleasure. It would be too awkward to try to put him in the middle of school committee members, so hopefully you're going to work it all out, and it's never going to happen.
So in essence, this motion has no real teeth to it, because the chairman, whoever that might be, has the last word on the agenda. Yes, Mr. Mudge.
Well, I would suggest that
Excuse me, Mr. Mudge.
look, I'd suggest that if this motion goes through, I think you give co-equal, authority. Regardless of that, I'd ask the council that it's my understanding that if you bring an item to the agenda and you get a second from a fellow school committee member, the item must be put on the agenda.
I don't even
Robert's Rules of Order.
No, that's not in your policy.
Okay, Robert's Rules of Order.
It's not in your policy. It's
We have
not
a
the
policy.
policy that you're,
Just trying to say, is that in Robert's Rules of Order?
you have a school department Mr. Mudge.
I
first of
know
all,
that.
If you have a school department policy, then your policy is what rules, not
I
Robert's
understand
rules.
that, but we
because
also have a policy to follow Robert's Rules of Order.
When they're in conflict.
We don't?
You have a policy, a school department policy that says you're going to follow Robert's rules.
I believe that is, yes.
I have not seen the policy in the 2 years that we've been here. We follow school department policy.
Yes. Okay, but I believe you'll see we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order.
Mrs. Avisado?
There are a lot of things in Robert's Rules of Order that I don't know about whether it's in a policy or not, but I know there's a lot of things in Robert's Rules of Order that we don't do, because in Robert's Rules of Order, you stand up when you make motions, and there's also...
I understand. Yeah, there's some details.
And there's other more substantive things that we don't do as well.
But I agree with you, Mr. Avanzon. However, something as pertinent as bringing something to the table, should be followed if it's in there, I believe.
Mrs. Page?
Further down in that same section of the policy, it does state that any school committee member who wishes to place an item on the agenda must submit the item to the superintendent or to the chairperson of the committee at least 14 days in advance of the scheduled meeting.
Sure. However, again, all I'm suggesting is Robert's Rules of Order says you really don't have to do, like, for example, tonight, if we make a motion, you don't have to wait 14 days. You can make it at the meeting, and it would have to be put on the order. And I would ask that that be checked. That's all.
Mr. Mudge, your policy is more liberal than what you're asking.
Madam Counsel, I'm just asking, how does Robert's Rules of Order govern this issue?
Robert's Rules doesn't rule if you have a policy that trumps Robert's Rules.
Madam Counsel, I understand
Mr. Mudge,
that.
if I
I'm
got-
just
I-
asking what the Robert's Rules of Order, suggest that we do.
It says you follow your policies first.
Oh, it does? Okay. Would you please put that in writing for me, please? If that's your opinion?
Okay, can we have a vote on the motion?
No?
All those in favor?
Can you repeat this?
Yeah, this is to change the policy BE to add the words "and vice chairperson."
Okay, thank you.
And vice chairperson.
Correct.
Superfluous.
Is that related to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
So, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. You heard me asking Ms. Page a question as related to the motion.
The rest of your question was?
It means now that you and Mr. Welch and the superintendent will work on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn?
So
Madam
moved.
Chair, we still on unfinished business?
Excuse me?
I had unfinished business? I'd like to comment.
Past 10 o'clock.
Presentation.
Well,
I didn't think we ever made a policy that we'd be out at 10 o'clock, did we, Ms.
It's in one of our
Page? I told you
policies.
that-
Yes, the policy is in a policy.
We actually did.
policy can be broken anytime, by the way. We know that.
So,
We know, we,
You got to sign this.
Is there something on the agenda we didn't finish? I didn't know.
yeah, I did. I wanted to propose
This is
that
the memo.
for fiscal year 12, that we buy computers for all incoming freshmen. Could we put that on the agenda for the next agenda? Buy laptop computers for all incoming freshmen next year. Thank you.